At the beginning of this video, I set the intention. I said, may my efforts here today be of benefits to others. But I want to tell you a quick personal story that was pretty synchronous. You guys know I do astrology. You also may know I'm a physician, but you may not know what kind of physician I am. And I'm actually an obstetrician gynecologist, which means I deliver babies. Okay. And I take care of women. And from time to time, a few times a month, I have to do what's called a call shift, where I spend 24 hours with my phone, and I'm just available to any person, patient, nurse that needs me for those 24 hours. And yesterday was one of those days, and the last baby that I delivered early this morning was named Falstello. And what was so interesting about this birth, I won't give you all the gory details, but the baby basically shot into my arms, and I literally caught the baby. Sometimes you have to help, but basically the baby just kind of landed in my arms. And it was so funny because the dad was laughing, and he said, well, the baby's name is Falstello, and Falstello means shooting star. So I just thought that was really cool. Ever since getting into astrology, my clinical practice and my 3D job has just gotten so much more depth and beauty and compassion to it. So with that, let's talk a little bit about truth. I think the energies this weekend are going to hit us in our truthies. I think there's going to be some truth coming at us. I think we're going to be able to take a little bit of a different perspective on things and see things as they really are. Arthur Schopenhauer is a philosopher, and he was quoted as saying, all truth passes through three stages. The first, it is ridiculed. The second, it's violently opposed. And then the third, it is accepted as being self-evident. I read an article, I think it was in the medium.com online, but they basically quoted Schopenhauer and then told a story about Galileo and his discovery of the stars. He actually was someone that his father wanted him to go to medical school, but while he was there, he didn't want to do it. He kind of fell in love with mathematics, and he invented lenses and was able to point those lenses at the sky and see the rings of Saturn, the moons of Jupiter, and confirmed with his own observations that in fact our solar system was heliocentric. In other words, the sun was the center of our solar system. And the church was a big deal back then. And the church said that, we lived in a geocentric model where the earth was the center of creation and all heavens circled around the earth. So Galileo got into a lot of trouble with the church for that. His first article that he published, he kind of got a warning, and then he wrote a book, and he was sent to jail, and he died in jail as a heretic. A lot of people being reincarnated right now are finding trouble finding their voices because they were people like Galileo in the past that were cut down, that were, silenced for the truth, right? So there's this cool quote that I pulled from Thomas Aquinas that I want to share with you, and then we'll get right into the astrology, guys. Let me go to my photos. Here we go. So truth is seen in its threefold aspect, appear before us in a perfect cycle, from God to things. So in other words, the truth of things, ontological truth, wherein man sees all things to be what they are precisely because they do so exist in the exemplar mind of God. From things to the mind of man, which is the second one, logical truth, the truth of thought, since here he makes a logical judgment of reality as it is ontologically true. And finally, from his mind to his actions, which is a moral truth, a perfect cycle beginning with God. So who is truth? Stretching into the uttermost bounds of reality, finding a place in man's mind, and perfect expression in his actions. The 12 cycles of truth from yogi practice. So first is learning the truth. Second is honoring the truth. Third is accepting the truth. Fourth is observing the truth. Fifth is hearing the truth. Sixth is preparing the truth. 7 is loving the truth. 8 is serving the truth. 9 is living the truth. 10 is working the truth. 11, walking the truth. And lastly, being grateful for the truth. So whatever comes up for you, that's your truth. And that's the perspective that you're going to work with after this weekend. And one final quote by John Dryden, an English poet laureate from the 1600s. He said, "Errors like straws upon the surface flow. He who would search for pearls must dive below." So dive deep into the watery energies of Neptune and Pisces. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And all you lurkers out there, subscribe to my channel. You know you want to. Just hit the button. So let's talk a little bit about communication, and in particular, compassionate communication. What does that mean? So when you're talking to someone or they're talking to you, are you really listening and understanding? Or are you formulating your next response? What's actually happening there when you're talking? A lot of times we listen without understanding. We listen, creating our next answer to that part of the conversation without actually understanding the intrinsic communication that's going on. And a lot of that actually comes from our heart. At the end of this, I'm going to point you guys to an amazing read on heartmath.org about heart-mind coherence, about physiological findings that they have found about the heart, that the heart actually has a rudimentary brain in it, and that it sends signals up to our brain. So a lot of times what we feel, what we intuit, the heart produces neurotransmitters and electrical impulses and hormone regulators that go up to our brain. And they make us feel good. They make us feel scared. They make us feel all kinds of things. And what is it that we always teach? It's that feelings become thoughts and thoughts become things. So compassionate communication requires sort of a knowledge or an understanding and an awareness of this subtle difference in how do we communicate. We receive, we transmit. There's verbal, there's nonverbal cues. You ever notice how when two people are kind of sitting together and they're talking and they're really into each other, it's not just what they're saying, it's their body language. You know, they're both maybe sitting like this, being interested in the conversation, or maybe they're like this, or maybe they're bored, you know, so they just kind of slouch back. So body language is another way to communicate how you feel. On heartmath.org, research/science of the heart. This is a nice ebook. You can download it or you can read it on the actual website. But what I found so interesting is that they were able to do studies and show that emotions that were repressed, or thoughts that were repressed, like not emotions that weren't expressed, or thoughts that were kept inside, were more damaging to the heart and to the prefrontal cortex than actually speaking the truth, having a positive outlook, feeling good. And so what impact that has is tremendous. People with chronic diseases that are depressed, they could have the best habits in the world, but they're not going to do as well as the smoker and the drinker that's happy, that's grateful, that's excited. The act of giving from the heart for the betterment of others is related to a concept in Buddhism called the Bodhisattva. This also touches on the polarity in the law of one, of service to self versus service to others. Let's look at some pictures of the Bodhisattva. Let's just kind of take some of this energy in. This one is the first one that caught my eye. And, you know, you first glance at it and you see a figure here that, I don't know, is maybe feminine, maybe masculine. I get more of a masculine vibe from this picture right off the bat. But he's holding what looks to be like a sunflower, right? Here. His right hand is open, palm facing upward. It could be the Hamsa hand upside down. It could be a coin. You know, I'm not all that familiar with Hinduism or Buddhism, but I like that there's sort of an offering here. So the other hand is the flower, the sun, the self. And then the one that's opened up is the moon hand, the hand to service. So self and service here. And this right side is cushioned on a foot. You know, the foot is cushioned on another flower. It looks like underneath, it looks like two lion serpents or griffins or some sort of mythical creature underneath supporting the power of this energy. And then on either side, you have these cones. And it just looks like there's this, maybe this is the soul star chakra up here that's connecting to the universal wisdom. So I love this image. You see a lot of different versions of the Bodhisattva. This is another version of, this is more of of a Eastern Asian influence. And this one has many hands, right? So right here, the center of the self, with all of the hands reaching outward, and each hand is holding something, So feel free to pause these videos and just gaze at these images and kind of see what comes through for you. Some other interesting depictions. This is a painting. This almost looks indigenous, like Indian. So it's, is this a man or is this a woman? I'm not sure. This feels more feminine to me than the other two, because this one is kind of leaning back and just sort of being receptive to the energies. It could also be someone who's maybe just woken up from a meditation or coming out of a sleep. There's almost emotion to this figure when I look at it. And then finally, another one here, more of the kind of the same imagery, but this hand is in the Apana mudra, while the other hand is here. And again, it's the right side, just kind of resting. I also get a feminine vibe from this, but more of an aggressive feminine vibe. Again, maybe waking up from a meditation or getting ready to move forward through space. There's just a lot of movement in this position of the Bodhisattva. So I love the idea of this service. So let me explain to you guys a little bit more about what a Bodhisattva is. Some of you probably already know, but it's essentially someone that has dedicated their own awakening to the benefit of all others. So in I think it's Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is someone who has taken a vow to put others first. Now, a lot of us go into spirituality, not because we want to serve others, but because we're hurting and we're wounded, and everything else that we've tried in 3D reality doesn't really seem to help us. So we turn to spirituality, we turn to meditation, we go within. And it's a very, to me, it was for me too, it was a very selfish motivation to go into that space, because I'm hurting and I'm wounded and things aren't working. And what is it that I need to do? How do I get better? And so with that daily meditation, with that selfish intention of trying to better ourselves, we end up developing a compassion for others, because we can feel their pain. Once we're past a certain point, we can see their pain. We can even visualize what it might be like to be them, even our greatest enemies. And so as we heal ourselves, we naturally want to heal others. And a lot of us, after we've gone through the whole pandemic stuff and kind of realizing that the world isn't what we thought it was, are on this path. Okay, so how do we help these others? Because there's going to be another huge wave of awakening in the coming months and years. So, this article that I'm kind of paraphrasing for you guys states that there's 3 ways to become a bodhisattva, someone that dedicates their life to the service of others. You can be in the way of a king, just like the sun in Leo, where basically you help yourself first, and then you seek liberation for those that you reign over or those that you rule. There's the way of the captain, right? The captain of the boat, which to me feels like this Saturn moon energy. So you arrive with the folks, right? You take your passengers to the shore that you're seeking. So you can either help yourself first and then help others, or you can go on the journey with others as the captain. And then the final way is the way of the shepherd, those who shepherd the helping all others seek enlightenment first. Okay, so that's 3 ways we can be a bodhisattva. I feel like the shepherd energy is more of a Virgo energy, which we might be feeling more when the eclipses come. But right now, I feel like we're doing king and captain energy. So do we help the collective, or do we help ourselves first? And for me, the point is to become the Buddha, the bodhisattva, the one who is enlightened in the flesh, is something that everyone can aspire to. You don't have to go into pay a bunch of money and be initiated into some sect or cloister and give up everything. You don't have to do that anymore. Not in the new age, the new energy that we're entering into. Everyone has innate access to this energy. And so you have to decide, how are you going to do it? Are you going to be the king? Are you going to be the captain? Are you going to be the shepherd? Some say you can do all three in one day. And so king, captain, and shepherd energy are here. Elevate yourself, heal yourself so that you can become of service to others. Okay. And so the very end of this article that I paraphrased for you suggested something very cool. And so I did that before I started recording this video. They say to say one intention at the beginning of your meditations and one intention at the end of your meditations. And so why do we believe what we believe? Why do we do the things we do? Why do we feel threatened when what we believe is challenged, or if someone says something different than what we believe? What about you? Do you believe the things that you see? Do you believe the things that you hear? The stuff you see on TV, the stuff you see on the internet? There's this old saying, believe half of what you see and nothing that you hear. But first, I have to talk to you about space crocs. These are amazing. As you saw on my thumbnail, these are my new work shoes. I could not believe I wear Crocs at work because they're super comfortable. They're lightweight. I'm not getting paid to talk about these. They're just great shoes in general for healthcare workers. And if you're on your feet all day, but I wear a really small shoe, about a 5.5 women's or a J2 for Crocs. And I found these at the Croc store and they have space all over them. So I just love these because I'm into space. I love the universe. And these are my new work shoes. So I just wanted to share that with you all. These are amazing. Um, so let's get into skepticism a little bit. There's this cycle of programming, and it usually starts with a piece of information, right? And it either resonates with what we believe or it doesn't. So we all know the sky's blue, or we all believe the sky's blue because we see it. So we can believe half of what we see. So yes, I would agree that the sky is blue. So we have this information. Someone has said the sky is blue. We look up, we see the sky is blue. We say, okay, cool. Then maybe some new information comes in. Maybe there's like a million people out there saying, nah, the sky's purple or the sky's green. So then we observe. And what if in fact, now this is just hypothetical, of course, but what if in fact we started observing the sky because we wanted to see who are these believers of a purple sky? Who are these believers of a green sky? So we watch, we observe, we see what the sky looks like from day to day. We may notice some individual variations in the sky, like one day the sky might be gray, or one day indeed the sky might be green. So then we're going to look into it a little more. Why do people believe the sky is blue? Or why do they believe it's green? And we get a little bit of healthy skepticism and an inspiration to investigate, to compare if our beliefs are the same. And then, so now we have this new information, which changes our beliefs. And then we go through the cycle again over and over and over. And each time we go through this cycle, you guys, our inner beliefs change, our subconscious changes. Again, so I want y'all to just have a healthy sense of skepticism, right? I mean, look around you, believe half of what you see, investigate what you're looking at. I mean, does it have any variation that needs some further diving into? Test your beliefs and make sure they're coming from your truest, authentic inner self. And then don't just believe what you're told, because the universe is way more interesting than what the collective consciousness believes. But don't take my word for it. Just look up, you guys. Here it is. This is the Good, Fast, Cheap life hack. And if any of you have seen the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise way back from the 80s, you might remember this is where I got it. And I've seen it all over the internet since then. But when I realized what this meant, it almost changed everything for me. It changed the way I look at the world for the better. It made it easier for me to make decisions without an emotional component to it. And what this triangle is saying to us is that you can have something fast and good, but it won't be cheap. So it's basically cost, time, and quality. So good, fast, cheap. So good would be quality, right? Cheap would be cost. And fast would be time. These are all resources. These are all things that we value. We value things that are affordable. We value our time. If we're going to spend time, we want it to be a quality time. So anything that's fast and good will be expensive. Anything that's good and cheap will take time. And anything that is cheap and fast will not be good. Okay. So really quick, really cheap, low quality. This can apply to literally any decision. What kind of camera do I want to buy for my studio? What kind of car do I want to get? How do I want this project completed? How do I want my website built? This is the triangle you can apply to that. So this is my quick little life hack. We will get back into the astrology. Thanks for bearing with me, but hopefully some light bulbs will go off for some of you and you can use this in your actual life.
That movement through space without thinking causes a lot of chaos, which a lot of times we're thought to think this is not a good thing, when in actuality it can be, especially if you are coming at it from the chaos magician's point of view. You can use your own chaos magic to help people. You can use your own chaos magic to maybe even move a hurricane, okay? Maybe even take the energy out of it with your own thought, with your own intention, coupled with this idea that I'm going to share with you today. So, you guys, and we're going to read some passages from it. And I want to just say before I even get started that this is this person's work. I am trying to interpret it for you and bring through concepts to help support my theory that we as magicians can use and manipulate things like astrology or whatever magic you use, right? Like if you use tarot, or if you use runestones, or if you use crystals, or if you're into Reiki, all of this is related to those concepts. For some reason, though, this guy really doesn't like astrology. It's really, really hilarious. So we'll start with that. I'd like to quote Peter Carroll, magicians and scientists should never attribute absolute reality to anything. And that's where the scientists have gone wrong. Chaos magic theory has a bearing on various other esoteric topics. There is little or nothing within CMT that favors retention of a belief in the pseudoscience of astrology, save that the beliefs of astrologers may exert some etheric effort, which would be much stronger if there were more consensus among astrologers. Personally, I'm thankful that there is of little consensus. Astrology is a type of magic, just like tarot is a type of magic, just like being in advertising is a type of magic. He says the 8 types of magic can be attributed to the 7 classical planets plus Uranus for octarine. However, in the cause of expanding the parameters of what can be attempted with each of these forms of magic, such an attribution will largely be avoided. So first of all, the whole problem with science in general is that we became too analytical. We lost the philosophical part of it. So I say physics fucked us, basically, when they gave us the concept of entropy. Now, I don't know if you guys know what entropy is, but when I was doing my pre-med courses, I had to take a physics course. So I took basically the physics course for dummies, and they do very little formulas. I'm not even going to show you the formula for entropy because it's even more complicated than what I want to show you later. But basically, the idea is that as we create matter, that creates heat. And what creates heat? Heat is movement. When nothing's moving, that's absolute zero. That's cold, okay? As particles and units of mass begin to move, they create heat. And so when you're creating something in the void, in the vacuum, it creates a heat around it, okay? And this heat increases entropy or information. That's all entropy is. It's an increase in information. Some people think of it as like chaos, but it's not. It's just all the information that's possible is absolute entropy. And what is that? When you have all the absolute possibilities all present in one space, that's the void. That's nothing and everything. That's also this quantum foam from which chaos magic comes from. So you get the more movement, you get more heat, you get more matter, you get more entropy information. And the weird thing about entropy is that it increases over time, and entropy can run backwards in the equation, but in what we witness in real life, that's not what happens. So what we witness in the now is simply the egg breaking. So the egg is broken and we can't unbreak that egg. And the chaos magician says, okay, I have a broken egg, but I can cook it and eat it now. So they see that energy moves from one form to another. And that's what entropy does. It moves through space-time, creates matter, creates entropy, and then you do this over the amount of time. But here's the weird part. Because physics has been so good at describing everything that we see with our limited senses that only pick up less than 1% of what's actually going on around us, this is all only relevant for the medium scale, like the stuff that's going on around us right now. But when you close your eyes and you go into the astral, or when you get into the theta state, you're having an out-of-body experience, this doesn't matter. Like, entropy can go forward and backwards. You can unbreak the egg, right? You can do that in your dreams. You can do that in the astral realm. And you can do that in what's called shadow time. Time isn't linear. Things ripple forward and backward in time. So it's important to understand that. So this is linear time. This is how we experience it. Basically, something happens and another thing happens and then another thing happens. And the theory is that at each point you are making a decision. Like, I decided yesterday I'm going to do a live today. So what I've done is I've created a timeline in which there is a live presentation today, where if I had chosen the other path, there would not have been a live presentation and it may have happened on Friday. So you see automatically when you look at linear time like this, that there are branch points. But what you'll come to understand when you're working energetically with time is that all of these timelines sort of exist on top of each other and are coincident. And the farther back in time you go to choice points, the more complex this branching of these different timelines become. And there are an infinite number of them. They all exist right now. There are timelines where I am a billionaire. There are timelines where I am an offshore fisherman. There are timelines where I'm a general on Mars. Okay, there are all these timelines exist for my soul. Some people even could call them different incarnations. They also exist all at the same time. So, so let's say you're in a timeline that you are not so happy about. Right? Like, maybe you don't have enough money, or maybe you're lonely, or maybe, the person you're with is just not resonating with you anymore and you want to change something. What's so beautiful about you as a conscious observer, a conscious creator, a co-creator within this existence, is that timeline where the lifestyle, the thing that you want is already there. And so all you have to do is focus your intention and attention on that particular timeline. So in the book Liber Chaos, Carol goes through a very nice explanation on the different types of time, asking you to, again, let go of and release the idea of linear time. Yes, you're perceiving it that way, but that's not how it works. The ordinary time, linear time, is made up of right now, right now, right now, right now, in a sequential fashion. So the now that was 10 minutes ago when we started this video is not the now that's right now. And then the now that's coming in just a few more moments. And what you see here is this diagram of what they call the light cone, or the time cone. And as you move up or down in this space, there are multiple branches of the future and there are multiple branches of the past. But the past and the future, if you think about this, and I really want you guys to understand this, hear me when I say this, is that the past, the moments that led up to this right now, are created by memory. They're not here right now. They're not real. It's just your mind creating a logical sequence of events for you to perceive as a physical human being. So the yesterday when I decided to do this now, right now, doesn't exist anymore. It only exists as a thought in my head, as a thought form. Okay, so understand that. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second, because this is really, really important. Actually, let me finish the whole idea of the past as well. So that was the past. And then the future is what we expect. So if I am expecting to finish this podcast within an hour, hour and a half, then that is the possible future of now. Obviously I can't foresee an electrical storm or the power going out, but that is one of the potential futures of this right now moment. These thoughts in our mind that create this pseudo time is the source of our suffering. Okay? The thoughts that we create in pseudo time from the past and what's to come is created in our own mind. That means that I can dismiss that thought as something that doesn't exist anymore, that isn't real anymore. I mean, sure, you could take it to extremes and not live in reality, but what I'm trying to tell you is that all the emotions that we create around it, all the energy that we put into past now moments that have already gone, that only exist as thought forms, consume so much of our time. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. So that's why understanding time like this is so important, because it takes your thoughts, it takes your worries, your depression, your grief, your inability to forgive, your trauma. It takes all of that and makes it just a thought. Then there is shadow time. And this is the ether. This is the space where we can create. Okay. It's perpendicular to pseudo time. If you guys have ever felt slips in time, you feel like time gets dilated or you feel like it gets sped up, that's because of your interaction with this space. You might be doing it unconsciously, but when you're in the zone, or when you're in the theta wave brainwave state, like right before you fall asleep or when you're consciously meditating, this is where you live. You live in the shadow time. Okay? So what's so amazing about this is that this figure here, this point in time that I'm pointing to right now, right? Each one of these decision points consists of this shape. Okay? And so when we are meditating, when we are in theta wave state or in the flow in gamma wave state, when you're doing something that you don't even have to think about, spirits moving you. Like one example would be a high performance athlete, or like when I'm doing surgery, I'm in the zone, like nothing can disturb me. Nothing can break me away from what I'm doing. All of these choice points are this. And if you can make choices in this orthogonal space, you can travel from timeline to timeline. You can travel to the future. You can travel to the past. And then you use your beautiful imagination to summon, to create whatever it is that you want. There's a concept of power versus energy, right? We all know the formula: energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Okay. So energy is expressed in joules. There's also an equation of physics called force equals mass times acceleration. Okay. When you flip some variables around and everything, basically you can also express energy as force times distance, or sometimes they call it work in physics. So force times distance also equals E equals mc squared. So E equals mc squared equals force times distance. But we're just talking about energy right now. So the force of something over the distance relative to where it started is the work or the energy that's needed for something to happen. And then power is force times velocity. So what's velocity? Velocity is distance over time, right? Miles per hour, distance over time. So if you take power and basically if you take energy and you divide it by time, then you get power. So energy divided by time is power, so this would be force over meters. This is force over meters per second is power. Hope that makes sense. And so really power is energy over time. So that's a very important concept, because the power that you have as a magician is literally as tapped into the unlimited energy source that is available to you as well. Okay. Now, we are all capable of miraculous and amazing things, and also terrible things too. Okay. E equals mc squared led to the hydrogen bomb. All right. Now, I'm not talking about us blowing up. Maybe we could. I don't know. But there is a potential there for you using it for harm or using it in a way that is unconscious. And I think there are a lot of people on planet Earth that are using their power, their unlimited source of energy, in a way that's unconscious. It's not necessarily that they don't realize it, they just don't realize what they're doing, if that makes sense. So if we know where this power comes from, we know that we are tapped into this energy source. We experience time linearly down here. So wow, we can watch chaos happen in real time, frame by frame, and almost have an intuitive awareness of what's coming next. And you can use that. And astrology actually helps you do that as well. So no conversation about magic would be complete if we didn't talk about the ether, which is actually something that's real. For the longest time, the scientists have said that it's just a vacuum. But what's happened over trying to reconcile quantum physics with general relativity is that they get these absurd answers that require crazy math in 11 dimensions, a holographic simulated environment. And if that's what you want to hang your beliefs on, you can still use this magic theory. You don't have to like believe that, we live in a planetary system or anything like that. But basically the quantum foam exists. It's the dark matter. Okay. Scientists are going to tell you that our universe is like, 90% dark energy and dark matter. Well, where is it? Where the F is it, right? It's everywhere. It's in everything. It connects all points of light, all points of vibration that are all resonating in the same frequency to create Dr. Dani, to create this microphone on my desk, to create, you guys watching. So ether acts as though it were a form of information emitted by matter that is instantaneously available everywhere and has some power to shape the behavior of other matter. It's analogous to morphogenic fields, morphogenic meaning creating forms, so fields that create forms, and non-local effects. So if you're sitting here in this point of space thinking about something on the other side of the world, what we're saying here is that you, because of the ether and because of how time actually works, you can change things. So I wonder if we all sort of kind of made that little hurricane in the Gulf just a little bit weaker with our intention, if we could make a difference. There's a lot of people out there saying that they're trying to do that. A lot of people through prayer, through intention. That's another way people do magic without even realizing it, by setting intentions and saying prayers. It is through these functions, it is through these mechanisms by which prayer and setting intentions actually works. So these etheric patterns become oscillations associated with the phenomena. And the etheric patterns should be regarded as the spirit of the phenomena. And ether is not superior to matter, and matter is not superior to ether. They are properties of the universe, and they co-evolve together. So chaos magic theory intersects two realms, okay? It brings together the space, time, mass, and energy that we're all well-versed on. If you want to dive into those equations, those come from, centuries of work. And we know how to describe mass very well, but we still don't actually know what it is. So if you ask a physicist, what is mass? They'll be like, it's kind of like a vibration, a little bit of vibration there at the center of the nucleus. It's got a lot of energy. We don't really know, but it weighs this much, and it's really, really tiny. And the mass of the universe actually has to be quite small in order for the laws of the physics to work. So in order to have the shape of the universe that they think we have, we actually have to have almost no mass. And in fact, I think that's actually the case. So the other thing it brings together is sort of the quantum energy, that probabilistic energy that we see with quantum physics. There are these ether patterns in shadow time. So when there's a thought form, it not only like ripples out forward and backward in time, but also in that orthogonal shadow time. And it causes these vacuum fluctuations. And then the other thing about how you can think about this is that time is circular and reality is acausal. So events are nonlinear, and every point of space is the center of the universe. So when we talk about these 5 principles, they basically bring together the minimum hypothesis to describe the physical laws and the violations that we see, that we ascribe to magic. And it also provides a limitation on the power of magic. Remember, we talked about that, and confirm that the universe itself is a magical phenomenon. Okay, so it's almost like it's creating itself just through the process of consciousness. So we reviewed that rule. All matter emits ether and carries information about that matter from which it has been emitted. Number 2, ether is non-local in space and is instantaneously available anywhere. Yes, that's right. I can reach out and touch Dr. Walker right now if I focus my mind and I reach out and I think a thought to her or of her. She can perceive that if her antenna is up and ready to listen to me, because it's non-local. We're in the same shadow time space, right? And that's why that information is available everywhere. Number 3, the coupling of matter and ether, so spirit and matter, right, gives rise to the physical laws of the universe. So when a conscious thought comes through, a thought forms come through and starts vibrating that ether, vibrating that quantum foam, that chaotic mix, a thought comes in there and organizes a little bit. It starts to oscillate, and then it sends out ripples in its ether and starts other oscillations that attract to it. And this is exactly how and why the idea of like attract likes works. And so when we're talking about vibration, that's why they say that, because if you're vibrating in the energy of fear, anger, sadness, or victimhood, you are rippling that ether and you're bringing that to you because you are a powerful magician. Okay. So yeah, I mean, if you guys are going through a tough time, lie to yourself, and lie to yourself with a full-throated endorsement of that lie about how wonderful your life is, because that will ripple outward and magnetize to you the things that are wonderful in your life. Principle number 4, the coupling of ether with itself creates patterns corresponding to the possible pasts and futures of any now moment. Okay, so this is what we're talking about in terms of distance of time. Since we're here and we have to perceive time the way we do, controlled chaos shot by shot. Okay, what we can do with our divination skills and how accurate we can be, we're more accurate the closer we are to the future event. So I could try to predict something 5 years from now. I could try to predict something 16 years from now. But because we've got the now moment and we've got 16 years to watch this unfold, can we change the future in 16 years? Probably. It's kind of, but you can't do it right now. So if you knew that something was going to happen tomorrow, there's very little you could probably do. You could only kind of see what actually will unfold rather than actually change it. And again, the farther back you go in the past, it's the same idea. So it basically sets a limit for how much gnosis you can have in that moment. And then principle number 5, the coupling of ether with thought forms also emits ether. This is it right here, guys. This is key. So the coupling of this ether with our thought forms emits ether. So everything you think, everything. I mean, even the silliest, stupidest, meanest thoughts, like they're rippling outward. So it's almost as if you have to de-identify yourself with the crap that's going on around you, because otherwise your thinker, your thought form creator, is going to start making these thought forms that will collect ether around them, creating an oscillation that magnetizes things to you. You know, enchant long and divine short. So due to the orthogonal nature of time, divination reveals the probability of potential futures of the now. So to change the past or affect the future, one must create thought forms for pseudo time with focus, like extreme focus. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been in the zone doing something. Okay, like when I would kite surf, or when I do surgery, like when I do surgery on somebody, if I'm doing a big complicated surgery, I'm in the zone. Like what I'm doing is the only thing that matters. right? And so that for me is a very what do you call it, I don't feel anything about my body. Like I'm not tired. I don't have to pee. I'm not hungry. I've been in surgeries for hours where I don't even think about any of that because I'm like focused, laser on what I'm doing. Okay. Same thing can be said with people that are playing music and they're very into a jam that's just kind of coming through them, like through spirit. And you watch them play, they close their eyes and they're like making love to the music. Like this is that kind of focus. This is what's called gnosis. Okay. This is the power in your magic. This is how you use that unlimited source of energy powerfully through focus. Because the magic happens in the shadow time and the active divination can create past and future events. Oh, yeah. So this is a big deal, too, because I know we like to watch people and see how they predict things that are going to happen. But sometimes we can actually create what we're trying to get people to avoid at the same time. It's so funny. I used to say this whenever, the Jim Cantori, the Weather Channel guy, would be in a different city or whatever. I'm like, they're trying to manifest a hurricane in that city because he's there and they have the cameras on and they're talking about it and they're speaking about it. They're spelling, they're using their words to get you to manifest the hurricane. Okay, so we have to be very careful that kind of information that we take in, because if we're in this now moment and we absorb that and we accept that ether into our oscillating field, then we can also create that by thinking upon it, by pondering what we would do about it. And so mindfulness also plays very big into this. If that's disrupting from what you're trying to create, then what you're doing is creating that other thing for the energy that you received. Here it is. So this is the power of magic. This is straight from Mr. Carroll's book, where M is the magic, okay? And you've got factors G, which is gnosis, L, which is your magical link, A, which is conscious awareness, R, which is subconscious resistance, okay? This equation is basically the sum equating to the probability of the desired effect. So let's say you want something. I want that car, okay? The probability of this desired effect, all values of G, L, A, and R are expressed in values from 0 to 1, okay? So the sum total of probabilities needs to be greater than 0.5 in order for a magical act to occur more often than a random act of chaos. Okay. And it's laid out by going through these 4 different qualifiers. So the first thing is G, which is gnosis. Okay. So this is, you want the probability of having gnosis when you're setting an intention, when you're praying, when you're working your magic, of 0.8 to 0.9. And that basically sums up to a hysterical focus or ecstatic meditation or being in the zone. Mr. Carroll says orgasm is the perfect example of a hysterical focus that gives you a gnosis. If you get into a really good transcendental meditation and you're like having an out of body, that's where your gnosis is, okay? There's a lot of different ways we can get into gnosis, whatever your zone is, okay? And the more you're in it and the more you're like completely unaware of anything else, that hysterical focus, then the more gnosis you have. Now, L is the magical link, okay? So what is the magical link? What is that? This is the part where you have to kind of bring in your belief. You kind of have to understand that shadow time works this way, and you have to be connected to the thing that you're trying to get, okay? So for example, if you want that car, maybe you've got like a picture of that car, or you go and you test drive that car. So you've got the smell and the feel and the heat of the car on your body, and you have a link to what that feels like. So your imagination, your contact with whatever it is you're trying to influence, and then a talisman of some sort. So talismans can get into that tricky area where you have to have something to do the work. Like, for example, I used to carry around crystals all the time. I used to carry around black tourmaline during COVID because I wanted to like protect myself. But then I realized that power was within me, not the tourmaline, because I ended up washing it and it crumbled to bits and I lost all my tourmaline. And I thought, oh no, they're going to get me. And then I was like, wait, that's kind of dumb, you know? And so what is your magical link to the thing that you're trying to do? A and R, conscious awareness and subconscious resistance, will inhibit your ability. So the more aware of the magic that you're doing, so if you're like, yes, I'm doing magic right now, then the less effective it will be. That's why that hyper focus on whatever it is you're doing, if you're, that level of gnosis, if you have that plus the imagining, and you don't even realize that that's what you're doing, like daydreaming unconsciously, just, if you lay back and you daydream, that's the perfect example of how to use your magic, because you're not even consciously aware that you're doing it. Sometimes when you're actually trying to do a spell or some sort of structured incantation or something like that, you use words or things that are meaningless, but if you say them over and over, it takes your conscious awareness to those words rather than the magic that you're trying to do, because you don't want your thinker, your thought maker, to interrupt in those etheric waves that you're creating with your gnosis and your magic R, which is subconscious resistance. Okay, so the more you disbelieve that you've got the ability to do this, then that's what limits you. Okay, so the more you're able to see your own magic in action, the more you believe it. And it's a feedback loop. So the idea is the more you do it, even just little things, the more you do it, if you can make it happen, if you've seen that it's happened before by doing these certain things for yourself, then it will be more likely to happen again. Because remember, this is all probability. And so in other words, if it's happened before, your magical link is stronger because you've seen it before, you've had contact. It makes pseudo time. Remember that those events in the future that we're expecting and the events that have just happened, it makes pseudo time more visible than just a thought form, just that etheric thought form of a few minutes past and what might happen in the next few minutes, because we can actually look at it. We can quantify it with a planet and a sign and a house. It increases our gnosis as well. So if you need more of a gnosis, if you start studying and thinking about astrology, it's going to be a great way for your conscious mind to sort of latch onto something so that you can do the magic, almost like the incantation, almost like the nonsense, as Peter Carroll would say. So it increases your magical link as well to shadow time, and it decreases the subconscious resistance, and it's repeatable. So when you see things starting to repeat themselves in astrology and certain things happen again, it literally makes you a believer. You're like, okay, yeah, I can see this happening. I can see this pattern. I can see how this pattern exists in the chaos, and that I can work with it. All right. So the final thing is that there's 7 colors of magic that are associated with the planets. Uranus is octarine, which is the 8th color of magic, and it is literally just whatever your unique magician's color is. There we go. Okay, so black magic or death magic is Saturn. Red magic is Mars or war magic. Yellow magic, which is ego magic, is the Sun. Orange magic, thinking magic, is Mercury. Purple, silver, sex magic is Venus. Green, love magic, is the Moon. Blue is Jupiter, which is wealth magic, and octarine is the pure magic of the magician. And what you can do with that chaos, guys, is you can create your own new thought forms, your own creative ideas. They will spontaneously pop into your field if you're listening. And chaos can rid you of your shackles too, because it's an opportunity to change things the way you want them to go. And you know what happens when you become a magician of the mundane? Like, it's almost as if you exist in a realm just outside of everything else, and you know a secret about the world. It kind of reminds me of the Buddha, right? It's like they're just sitting there smiling and content because they know a secret about the world. Like, you can go and do your boring 9-to-5 job and you can keep doing it. But hopefully after this talk, you can do it like a magician. Okay, like any chaos that comes from it, revel in it. Get in there and change something for yourself if you don't like it. Always look at change or fluctuations with a positive outlook so that you can help mold your timeline. Here we go. This is a very nice pendulum example. And it goes through many iterations of its energy patterns. But what you'll see is sort of a big wave that becomes a smaller wave and a smaller wave and a smaller wave. And then you have this chaos. And then all of a sudden there is an organization. And then there's another wave of energy and a little bit of chaos and another wave of energy and organization. So you can see how it goes in and out of these patterns of chaos and synchronicity, or synchronized. So chaos and order, back and forth. And this is what what came to me when I thought of the pendulum, and I thought about the movement of the planets, because that's what we're doing here with these videos. We're taking the actual movements of what we're observing in the sky, and we're creating a story which tells us a lesson for our lives, and how it affects us is uniquely personal to each and every one of us. So, while we're all in the collective pendulum apparatus, so to speak, each one of this is an individual ball with an individual string and an individual frequency, depending on how the wave moves through. And the other thing about pendulums is that they move from one direction to the other, but when they switch, they kind of slow down and stop. And there's an inflection point in its energy where it becomes, instead of kinetic energy, it becomes potential energy. And then the potential energy falls and the kinetic energy picks up. And it's a swinging motion through energy changing hands, going from chaos to order. And our planets actually do this, you guys. If you watch a retrograde planet as it's moving station retrograde and then station direct and direct, you will see this pattern. And in fact, the inner planets are the easiest ones to watch because, in fact, we have a Mercury retrograde coming up at the end of this month. And so what we're going to see is Mercury will slow down, stop, and then move backwards very quickly, and then slow down, stop, reverse course, and go back direct. And so, in effect, creating this pendulum of energy. Okay, so I did another PowerPoint. I can't help myself. All right, so these are the types of pendulums that we see out there in the normal, everyday 3D world. The little desktop, kitschy thing, where you can just kind of watch the balls go back and forth. You've got the different length strings, so you can see the waves of energy as it moves through the system, causing chaos and order. And then they have these very large pendulums that you can find in some of the museums. I know there's one in DC. I think there's one up in New England somewhere. What was super interesting, though, about these larger pendulums is that during an eclipse, so these pendulums, they swing back and forth very slowly, and the axis of their path rotates a little bit as the day goes on. So it slowly rotates a little bit. And in 24 hours, it will complete an entire rotation. Now, during an eclipse, it will actually pause and go backwards the other direction for a little bit, which is really sort of spooky, but interesting. And so if you don't believe that these lunar and solar events don't do anything energetically, then I would have to point you to that instance when they did that and they were able to replicate it. But then there's also a couple of other types of pendulums out there that we use in the woo world. So we have the scrying pendulum, right? Where I actually had one of these and I ended up washing it, like all my crystals, and it broke and it made me so sad. But the idea is it's almost like muscle testing to me, where you hang this deal here and then you ask yourself a question and you wait for the direction of the movement of the pendulum to make itself known. And you have your own personal rubric for that. So for me, for example, forward and backward would be yes, and side to side would be no, and then kind of wobbling would be unknown right now. So you can do it like that, and to me that just seems like a personal form of muscle testing. Like you can do that with yourself too. You can link your fingers, and if the answer is no, you can't break the links, and if the answer is yes, you can. So you can muscle test yourself like that. But the pendulum's pretty cool because it's this idea of the swinging motion, the tiny little movements that spirit gives your muscles to make it yes or no, because you're ultimately the one that has that knowing. Those small muscle movements begin to create a compounding frequency with the oscillations, and you get bigger movements at the end of the pendulum, which is why you can see how it's a bigger answer, whereas muscle testing might be somewhat subtle. If you're using a pendulum, you can get a very, very big response. And then, of course, there's the hypnotist's pendulum, where the idea is you sit there and you just watch something go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, or some sort of mesmerizing graphic that repeats itself. There is a theory that if you move your eyes like you would in the certain brainwave states, then you can induce that brainwave state. There's a lot of spiritual technology out there where people are trying to induce certain brainwave states like theta, alpha, delta, and beta. So when you're using a hypnotist pendulum, you're trying to induce that theta state, that suggestible state, that right between theta and alpha, where they're somewhat conscious but very, very suggestible. And so that eye movement, that back and forth eye movement, is what might be the thing that gets you into that state. So I found that super interesting. And then there is this idea of the cosmic pendulum. And I think that this concept came from Ishtak Bentov, but it's not in the book that I downloaded. So it might be from a different book. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong. But basically, the idea is that there are ebbs and flows of energy within the cosmos, and it creates a swinging and a swinging back and forth energy, an outward and an inward, or a spiral motion, where there's the cosmic inhale and then the cosmic exhale. So I thought this was super interesting, and it related it to electromagnetic energy and the way that energy flows. And the idea was that if you can breathe in a certain way, you can synchronize your heartbeat with the natural contraction of the larger vessels of the body, thus creating a what do you call it, a synchronous heart rhythm, so that your field was more pure and more aligned. So that's another idea around the pendulum. Now, I want to go into a more interesting pendulum. Yeah, it gets better, guys, believe it or not. That we can learn from a concept called reality transurfing. And it revolves around the concept of setting intentions, having thought forms, more than one person having the same thought form. And it reminded me of this verse from Matthew 18. And again, I say unto you that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So while this may be the Bible, this is definitely wisdom, because this is how these reality transurfing pendulums actually work. So let's get into it. Let me explain to it. It's often called an egregore. So you may have seen that word before. And if any of you have ever heard of Vadim Zeland's book, Reality Transurfing, then you probably have an in-depth idea of what this is. I used this article and I summarized what this pendulum was. And I think it's very relevant for the times we're living in. So let's get into this. So in accordance with the concept of reality transurfing, people who think in the same direction create invisible energy, informational structures that directly affect us in daily life. They are called pendulums or egregores. Essentially, a pendulum is a sort of a thought condensate. It's the soul of a thing, of an idea, of a doctrine, of an organization, ideology, or anything that has admirers, supporters, followers, and fanatics. So YouTube is a pendulum, and we are all followers, admirers, and supporters, right? Political parties are pendulums. Groups of friends, groups of people are pendulums, and they pull us in a certain direction. They hypnotize us in a way. So you can have religious pendulums, political, familial, national, corporate. And the way you can tell that you've got a pendulum, it will reveal itself during a massive public event. So like a football game, for example, when all those people are cheering, "Let's go, Brandon," right? That is a huge pendulum, because all of us, it's spontaneous. And these people are chanting this thing in unison. And many material things that we value start to have pendulums, for example, new iPhones or money. So this is where I wanted to go back. And so once these pendulums appear, they can put people that created them under their control, right? The thing, pendulums don't actually have a consciousness. They're not sitting there wondering what they are, whether they're good or bad, what their purpose is in life. Their sole purpose of existence is to draw energy from those that follow it. So the bigger the followership that feeds the pendulum energy, the more powerful is the pendulum. This makes sense, right? Like sometimes we sort of, throw shade on YouTube because of its censorship practices and its bizarre algorithms, but at the same time, we're using it, we're learning from it, we're feeding it our energy. Okay. And the only way that you can decrease the pendulum energy, the egregore consciousness, is to decrease the amount of followers, because then the vibrations die out and it dissipates. And there's no ceremony when it dissipates. It's simply gone. Now, most of the pendulums have a destructive nature because they drain energy from their followers and oppress them. So some examples of this might be war, economic crisis, criminal gangs, or mafia. A pendulum will oppose its followers to other groups as well, because the pendulum doesn't want you to give your energy to anything else. So then it creates this morality for you, where we in this pendulum are good and they are bad. So it aggressively accuses anyone that didn't decide to become a follower and tries to either attract or to neutralize or destroy them. So it doesn't really matter whether you love or you hate the thing, fighting for it or against it. In both cases, you're swinging a pendulum and it becomes stronger by feeding on your energy. So it doesn't really care if it's positive or negative. It'll work equally well. So if you find yourself in an angry state, giving your energy to some sort of group energy, check yourself. Is this an egregore? Is this a pendulum? Is this something that's taking my energy from me? And one of the things that the pendulum does for you, for giving it the energy, is it hooks you up, right? It keeps you busy thinking about what it is. Astrology is a pendulum for sure. You get in it and you're always thinking about it and you're always wondering how it's affecting you and what it's doing, and you give it your mental energy. And the way that it does this is by disbalancing you. The egregore, the pendulum, will unbalance you. And that's how it gets access to your energy, because when you lose the balance, you start to swing on a frequency of a pendulum, allowing it to gain more momentum. So here's that movement that we're talking about again, those waves of energy that come in and out that we saw in the variable length pendulum there, where it was weaving in and out. This is what the egregore energy does. It takes advantage of this. So it might control you with fear, inferiority complexes, a sense of guilt, false importance also. So like when a pendulum, this is an example they give, when a pendulum captures your mental energy, your attention in a loop, and you tune into its resonant frequency. So then you get mad, annoyed, feel anger, and resent, and then it's just a loop and it feeds off of you. Okay? So, and you can't get away from it. You have to simply just not have a feeling for it. This is what Vladimir Zeland says. In order to get rid of something that's bothering you, you need to admit that it exists and has a right to do so. So like if there's something out there in the world that you really hate and despise right now, and you vehemently hate it, you're giving it your energy. So you acknowledge that it exists and has a right to do that. Then you calm down and you lose interest in it. You ignore it. And by doing so, you deprive it of your mental energy. Okay, so the neuroscience of light language. So light language is really described as a form of intuitive, nonverbal communication, but it is verbal, right? Because we're vocalizing. And at least we're focusing on that for this particular discussion. And what it does is it conveys frequencies of energy rather than literal meaning. And people that work with light language, whether through vocal sounds, hand gestures, or symbols, what they believe is that it actually bypasses the mind and directly reaches the heart and soul. And by doing that, you can get down to the core, down to the root, promoting healing, clarity, and spiritual connection. Um, so for this discussion, I do want to focus on vocal sounds because it is Taurus, right? And then the body movements. But what it does is it carries a frequency that we can't necessarily hear, even though we are hearing a sound that directly So that moon energy, that limbic system, that right side of the brain is picking up on those frequencies that we actually can't hear, that are being transmitted on the frequencies that we can hear. Okay. And it's usually transmitted or comes from a higher consciousness or a dimension. So a lot of times channelers will say that they're bringing it through their higher self or through the Pleiades, for example, not messages that come directly from their animal brain. So this is supposed to resonate with the soul, and it's supposed to really bypass that analytical brain, like completely cut off the top half and front of the brain in order to get right to where we can react from the heart, react from our intuition. So you want to start off by basically setting an intention. Why do you want to do the light language? Is there some sort of benefit you hope to gain from this? Like, do you want to just connect with your higher self and see what energies come through? Do you want to channel healing energy? Do you want to simply open yourself up and see what happens? You can also ask for guidance, protection, anything like that. So set that intention, clear the space. And the resource I got this from, hit record and reflect as the last step. But what you should do before you even get started is hit the record button. Record what you're going to speak, record what you're going to vocalize. And then, however, you normally get into a meditative state, do that. Okay. So if you do it through being in nature, if you do it through just deep breathing, if you do it through like a singular focus, however it is that you get into a meditative state, you just go there. And then you start, after your mind quiets down in the meditative state, you can feel energies sort of coming and going. It's very subtle. So you just want to feel into it and let go and then begin to speak. Just speak whatever it is. If it's if it starts off as words, that's okay. Like words that your mind knows, that's fine. If it's words that you've never heard before, that's also fine. If it's singing, just humming or anything, that is your light language. Just let it out. And a lot of times, and I've felt this too when I'm in a meditation, I feel like I need to use my hands. Like there's certain hand signals you can do. What are these called? They're not sutras. Mudras. They're called mudras. And certain ones will activate certain channels in your body. So you can do that. If you know your meridians and you want to do that, you can also just put your hand over your heart. You can imagine the energy around you and you're moving it with your hands. There's all kinds of things you can do with your hand as you speak. And then you want to just connect with those emotions that are coming through. Trusting yourself, letting yourself go. There's no right or wrong. There shouldn't be anyone there to judge you because it doesn't matter. No one's listening to you. It's just the recorded, just the record button that you hit, and that's it. And you can delete it if you hate it, right? So no big deal. Just try it. So after you do that, after your session's over, you hit stop. And then you just let it go. You just clear yourself, you ground yourself, and then go back and listen to it. And then close your eyes and meditate, but receive that message instead of transmitting it. So you transmit it to yourself, and then you listen to it and receive it from yourself or from whoever inspired you to speak those words. Okay. So that's basically how you work with the light language, how you do it. It's super simple. You don't have to go to any class to do it. You don't have to pay anybody $100 to learn how to do this. If you can get into the meditative state and you have something that can record your voice, you're all set. I've even heard of some people playing it backwards, because sometimes the verbalization that comes through, if it's played backwards, will give them a different message. Not that it's evil, but it will give them something that's more associated with connections it can make. So here's some of the benefits of it. When you're doing that, when you're expressing yourself like physically with your hands and your voice, and you're not worried about what anybody thinks, you get a huge emotional release. Like you can just laugh yourself to death like that. You can cry. It promotes a really strong spiritual connection, at least to your higher self, and sometimes even to the spirit, to source, to angels, to higher dimensional beings. It can help you with your energy healing if you can access into this. Use light language while you're doing energetic work. It can help with that. It can increase your intuition because you're using that part of the brain. You're flexing that muscle that wants to receive instead of analyze. And that will enhance your creativity. So when you get those intuitive hits, all of a sudden the creative juices are flowing and, oh, wow, you have all these great ideas, just getting into the meditative state itself, whether you channel light language or not, can can put you into a relaxed state and relieve stress. It can also help you with your own personal activation. So if the intention is to set up an activation in yourself, if you do that for yourself and you change your perspective, you're also going to do that for the collective. Okay. So this also enables empowerment and self-expression. This is where you may want to build community around it. So if you know people that are open to listening and to giving you feedback on how they feel, and most people in our community would receive that pretty well, I'm sure. I know I would. So if you guys are doing it, you want to send it to me, you can email it to me or message me on Facebook with it. I love to hear it. So yeah, so if I can empower you to express yourself that way, please know that I'm available. It can also improve your communication. So like your ability to express yourself just verbally as a human to another human will also improve with the practice of light language, giving you clarity and focus. The metaphysics, it's frequency and vibration. We talk about this a lot. We've already brought this into the discussion. So it operates sounds, symbols, and movements that have a 3D representation and vibration, but also have one that is not perceivable by our five direct senses. It's a feeling of it, right? So it affects your energetic field. When you begin channeling that light language, you're letting that expression through. Your own personal etheric field and aura will begin to change color and vibrate at a different frequency, attracting direct communication with higher dimensions, with your higher self, with higher vibrational frequencies in general. Okay. And that's thought to activate the part of your DNA that's considered junk DNA, that's considered asleep, and your soul codes, bringing through what you're here to do, that ancestral energy that's been asleep for so many generations because of the suppression of it through our collective programming. And then you can have consciousness expansion, right? So when you're in that, you're not really aware of your five senses. You are now hyper aware of the field around you. So your awareness field expands outward, not just outward, but also into those other dimensions that are all around us, into the ether, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. A lot of times people that do light language will also draw or write while they're doing it. And sometimes what comes through is sacred geometry, like the flower of life, the seed mantra, things like that. They'll draw sacred geometry and other symbols that are alchemical for them. Also connecting to and attaching the mind to um, that etheric field. When we talk about doing magic, the reason we have incantations and symbols is not to analyze them and figure out what they mean, but to give the active brain, the thinking brain, something to chew on while we expand out into the field of consciousness. And then once we tap into that field, there's a non-linear and non-temporal communication. So you can go, when you're doing this, you can speak to beings from the past. You can speak to things from the future. You could speak to things on the other side of the world. You can speak to things that are in another galaxy. It's because it's all in that etheric field, which is all in the same place and the same time at once. And it just speaks to the unity of all things, right? It's rooted in the idea of unity consciousness, the belief that all of life is interconnected, and through that vibrational communication, it enhances your awareness of that connectedness, which brings healing, which brings compassion, which brings harmony to your life, which brings a whole different resonance that most of the world is not currently vibrating. It's the idea of quantum entanglement, right? So you can take two particles and separate them by vast distances, and whatever you do to one particle, that whatever state you change it to, the other one will automatically flip its state. And that means that it's all connected because we're all from one source. So when you're using this etheric field and you're creating vibrational ripples through the quality and tonality of your voice, you're connecting to things through the field. The wave particle duality idea. You're using sound as a physical instrument, as a particle, even though sound is an energy. And then, of course, the non-locality. Someone whose intention is to heal you through their vocalizations can do that through a Zoom call, because even though, and they can do it when you're even not listening, like you don't have to even be listening to them doing it. They can just do it for you. But a lot of times we need to see them doing it to get that proof, right? So I could turn this video off and I could do a light language and I could speak to all of you that are watching right now, and you would still get it. Even though what I'm trying to do is also speak in a way that is understood by the analytical brain, even though the message that's coming through for you guys is a higher vibration, right? Because this did not come from my brain. This all came together through my brain, but it's coming from someplace else. Okay. Then there's consciousness as a creative force. And so when you observe this mechanism of action, when you can see the effects quantumly and physically of the light language, of what you're doing, it creates a positive feedback loop for your practice. And you can use it as a tool for so many things. So if you're sitting there with an intention to heal a group of people, even if you're by yourself and no one's listening, and you go ahead and you resonate that out, you're going to bring that into your field. You're going to bring healing for those people into your field, and you will get the manifestation of that and the positive feedback of that action. You will see that because of the magic that you're creating, actually using light language. Let's get into the actual neuroscience, the brain energy, what is happening with the brain. It activates the right hemisphere of the brain, involves the default mode network, which we'll talk about. It induces an altered state through the thalamus and limbic systems, which, remember, the moon rules that energy. And it enhances theta and gamma brain waves, which are important for channeling and getting into that state where the thinking brain's quiet. It also activates the mirror neuron system, which is your empathy network. And it involves the temporal and parietal lobes, which is how you hear things that are not from your immediate environment. And it's also how you see things that are not immediately in front of you. And then it reduces that prefrontal cortex activity that we talked about, that thinking brain, that analyzing brain. And then there's an increased connectivity in brain networks. So let's go through each of these. Here's part one. So we activate the right hemisphere. What's the right hemisphere responsible for? Well, it's creative expression and intuition. It's nonlinear, abstract thinking, emotional processes, empathetic processes, the artistic side of our brain, symbolic, visual, spatial thinking. It's the holistic integration of all the sensory information, including the extrasensory information. It's connected to higher consciousness and intuitive insights. And it's also in the place where we have imagination and visionary experiences, especially that right temporal lobe. And here's a description of that. So learning and memorizing nonverbal information. This is where that mirror network is, where you see other people, how their body language, their nonverbal cues, you learn to mimic those and hence feel the same emotions they do. So that it activates that. So once you are doing it, once you're just in your meditative state and you're speaking the words, instead of just sitting and meditating, you're now activating this right side of the hemisphere, also the limbic system and the thalamus. So when you wake up those parts of the brain, you also involve the default mode of the brain. So it's daydreaming, mind wandering, creative problem solving, a decreased external focus, enhanced introspective. This is states where, say, for example, you're in a car and you're the passenger and you're just listening to music and you're looking out the window and all of a sudden 3 songs go by and you don't even know what the songs were. Somebody asks you a question, you're like, what? Or they're like, what are you thinking about? And you're like, I don't even know where to start because there are so many things that you were thinking about. And it's part of the backside of the prefrontal cortex, and then the folds around the temporal lobe on both sides of the brain. So it's good for resting, daydreaming, thinking, meditating. So when you meditate, you activate this, and it really, really opens up your ability to receive information. So again, here's the thalamus and the limbic system, and this is what the moon rules, okay? So every month we go through these waves of emotional reactive energies because of the moon, and it is directly affecting this part of our brain. The thalamus is responsible for filtering sensory information and regulating your level of alertness. The limbic system governs emotional responses and memory. And activation of this system can deepen emotional perception during light language expression. So these altered states that we get when we're in a state of bliss or meditation bypasses the rational mind, enhancing our intuition. And right between the two limbs of the thalamus on either side of the brain is the pineal gland. And that the pineal gland is responsible for our altered states, for our ability to connect. It's our third eye. Okay. So we get connection to intuitive or spiritual experiences through this practice. Then we also activate certain theta, certain brainwave states that are important for the energetic work that we want to do. You know, delta is deep sleep. Uh, Theta is meditation. Alpha is what we're doing right now, where we're awake, beta and alpha. Okay. But gamma and theta, once you pass through delta, you get to gamma. And that's where you're actually like dreaming and working and doing things in the spiritual realm. And the last meditation I did for the new moon that began this lunation that we're in right now, that one uses binaural beats, getting you guys to that right at the edge of alpha theta, so that you can be this is where you're very suggestible. So when you're in this state, when you're in that hypnotic state, you can be told things, you can be programmed subconsciously. So yeah, using binaural beats, we get to that because you can't actually hear these frequencies. They're way too low. They're subaudible. But yeah, these brainwave states increase your creativity, insight, and inner awareness. And when you're in that trance state, activating that part of the brain, you activate these brainwave frequencies. And here's the mirror neuron system. And this is what I was talking about earlier. And it's basically empathy and imitation. So when you see your mother get some bad news and she reacts, when you feel the way she feels, you're going to react the same way. That's the mirror neuron system. You don't even know you're doing it. Or when you're sitting with somebody and you're vibing with them and you do what they do, like you know, they rest their chin on their hand, you do the same thing, they cross their legs, you cross their legs. That's what this mirror neuron system is doing. And so when you're feeling someone else's energy and that's activated, you can see that between two people. It's super interesting. So it really gets activated when you're observing other people's sounds or gestures. And so this is activated when you're hearing light language. So when you're hearing it, because of those subtle vibrations that you can't normally sense, because you're receiving that through your limbic system, you are also going to get into the same resonance or the same state of mind as that person. And so if you just close your eyes and you listen to the transmission, it will enhance your ability to read and interpret energetic communications from other people. So yeah, this and if you're speaking light language with another person, again, don't look at it as a conversation. Don't look at it as these people are talking about coffee or the weather. They're not. When one person speaks, the other one receives, and then the other one responds. It's totally on a subtle level. Their brain may be going, "What am I saying? I don't even know," and that's totally fine. But they are communicating on those higher dimensional levels. All right, let's see what else it does. So it involves the temporal and the parietal lobes of the brain. So this is where that speaking comes in. So if you're just meditating and you're just listening and you're just getting into that theta brainwave state and you're really enjoying it, you're not activating the parietal and temporal lobes until you actually start to utter or to sing or to chant. And what this does is as the temporal lobe processes auditory information and language, the parietal lobe integrates the sensory information and the spatial awareness, and they bring it together so that you can actually hear the sound as you're speaking it. And there's a certain spot in the brain, it's called Wernicke's area, that when someone is channeling will actually light up. When they're just speaking, that part doesn't light up, but when they're channeling, that does, indicating that they're also listening and that the speaking is coming through. This green part right here is what's activated when we're actually talking and channeling at the same time. So receiving and hearing and speaking. And then we get this is the part of the brain that's always talking and thinking and trying to make connections for you. So when you're doing light language and you're letting your thinking brain be quiet, then automatically this area of the brain will reduce. You'll get into that flow state, and you'll find that you're not really holding yourself back. As you repeat the process and keep doing it and see that the effects are happening. So this is literally like magic that you can do in the privacy of your own home, record the sounds you're making, and also receive the message from yourself. I just think it's incredibly beautiful. And this technique is great because if you're someone that really can't be quiet when you're meditating, I have a few clients that are like, I cannot shut my mind up. I don't know how to meditate. This might be the way to do it. This might be the way to actually get your mind in a meditative state, tricking yourself through the verbalization. And then finally, what it does is it increases the connectivity in your brain networks. That corpus callosum, the bridge between the two halves of the brain, the left side and the right side, which are constantly fighting with each other, bridging that network manifests creative genius. Like if you want to be a creative genius, you want both sides of your brain working together, not just in the mystical meditative state, but all the time. You want your conscious and your subconscious mind to be constantly talking in a almost walking meditative flow state every moment of your day. That's what I'm striving for all the time. So because it helps you get those intuitive hits, you almost like, I'm going to go this way. Oh, wait, no, I'm hearing no, I'm going to go this way. And you find that your synchronicities line up, that your life is super lucky and full of blessings. Not to say that things don't go wrong, but the way that you navigate it is probably the luckiest path you'll find. You'll be like, how did I get out of that one? So, and then what you can do is also not just channel words and knowledge, you can also channel ideas and synthesize the two. I don't think a lot of people truly understand what the Kundalini awakening means. It is synonymous with your spiritual awakening, but it is also a very physical process. And a lot of people do it unguided. A lot of people will have a Kundalini awakening spontaneously just when they start meditating, and they don't understand what's happening to them because their body will go through certain physical reactions. They'll also sometimes have mental breakdowns, bouts of depression. So it can be pretty tough. The Ophiuchus energy is not something you want to just sort of play with or dismiss as some sort of hocus pocus spooky energy. There's a reason it is esoteric. There's a reason it has been hidden, because it's also incredibly destructive. Because when you're working with your own demons, like, you have reactions, that may or may not be good for you. So, so let's get into this. We're going to talk about taming the serpent, charming the serpent, what that actually means. And we're going to have a very adult discussion about this. So why do we study the serpent? Why is the serpent so much associated with this energy? Well, I mean, I just showed you the sky, okay? You saw serpents, the constellation of serpents going through Ophiuchus. The symbol of Ophiuchus is the U with the snake holding it, balancing it. So it's a universal symbol across cultures and traditions, because when we gazed at the sky as ancient people, we saw these things in the sky. It's called pareidolia. You can't help but look at an arrangement of stars and see perhaps a snake or a serpent or a dragon, and associate it with the darker, more baser energies of our physical existence. But not only does it represent that, but we have to have it, right? Because you can't have light without darkness. They both coexist in the same space. And it's very Libra energy. So if you were to take the higher perspective of Libra, the kind of the yin yang balancing, walking that windy path between the light and the dark. So it is a balancing of that shadow. And I promise you, before you truly dive into Ophiuchus energy, once you do, you will know it is upon you. And there's nothing you can do about it. You literally have to face those shadows. You have to face those demons. You've set yourself on a course of healing and spiritual awakening. So it's personal and spiritual growth. And guys, we're doing the constellational sky. We're doing the real sky. So hopefully you all know that by now, because we're studying Ophiuchus. And so this is not included in your tropical Western astrology, in the tropical zodiac. It's just not there. Yes, the galactic center is somewhere in Sagittarius, but the energy of this snake, the energy of taming the serpent, is just glossed over. Because once you do this, once you study this, once you understand your shadows, then you are no longer controllable, right? You can use your own loosh for your own creative endeavors. Your loosh no longer belongs to the construct, to the matrix, okay? To someone else's energy. It belongs to you now once you deal with that. And once you have your own loosh, and you realize how powerful you are, it's utterly incredible. It's life-changing, life-altering. So this is the part of the sky we're talking about. This is ignored. This is your way in and out of here. This is conscious death, conscious birth. So what is the shedding of our skin? Well, this is releasing programming. This is releasing those subconscious beliefs that you sometimes don't even realize you have. So the serpent is also a symbol of creation and fertility, embodying the primal energy that fuels itself. In many creation myths, the serpent represents the infinite potential and the cyclic nature of existence. So this archetype is mirrored in the double helix of the DNA. This coiled serpent that's inside of you is your potential, okay? Just like DNA is potential. And so when that coiled serpent, that Kundalini awakens, it activates your creativity, aligning you with the universal energy that drives creation. You can tap into your Black Moon Lilith. You can tap into that Venus energy. You can create without effort. It's quite spectacular. And it's not just limited to the physical act of procreation. In fact, you don't even need that. But it extends to the realms of art, innovation, and spiritual expression. So you will find if you develop a spiritual practice where you meditate and you work with this energy through your chakras, that you're healthier, that you have more energy, that you're more creative, that you're more accepting, more compassionate, more loving, you sleep better, all of it. You attract better people to your life. But when you do it, when it happens spontaneously, or if you're not sure what's going on with your body, you can have all these things like ascension symptoms. So you don't want to overdo it either, right? You want to have grounding practices. You want to be in nature. You want to be in water. You want to be in the wind. You want to sit with a fire and just not think. So because this surge of creative force, if you're not used to it, can knock you off of your mind and your body. So you can get energetic imbalances and emotional instability. So as we tap into this primordial power, we have to do it with care. We have to be respectful of it. We have to be respectful of other people's journeys, because we don't want them going through these experiences and then having the judgment because of the group doesn't understand what they're going through, right? So everyone's in their process. So we understand our role in this creative dance. We understand that there are cycles, things come, things go. How do we work with it? Creation and destruction are intertwined. Yes, you can create something and give it all your energy, but then when it's time to be birthed and to be on its own, you have to let it go and dissolve the attachment toward it. So we are the ones who are responsible for how we channel this transformative energy. The serpent can be considered a guide and a guardian, leading us to confront the hidden aspects of our psyche, like just what we were talking about. Kundalini energy, when activated, brings heightened self-awareness, illuminating our shadow self, those parts of us that we suppress, fear, or deny. This process of integration is crucial for spiritual growth, as it allows us to transform fears into strengths and obstacles into opportunities for self-discovery. That's the key here. That's why we do astrology. That's why I read charts for people. Because when you can know yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the dark, the light, you can look at yourself objectively. And what are you going to do with that information? Well, guess what? It's up to you. If you find out that there's a repeating pattern in your chart, there's opportunity to use it constructively, to build, to create for the betterment of all, for yourself. So all this work is called shadow work. So it's intense, it's challenging. You have to be vulnerable. You have to ask for help. Asking complete strangers to help me take a journey into my past lives, that's not easy for someone that likes to do everything themselves. Mindfulness too. I always talk about that. Just watch what you're thinking. Always be looking at the thoughts your thinker is thinking. Through the lens of the serpent, shadow work is an initiation. It's a necessary step toward reclaiming wholeness and balance. The serpent's role as a temptress, reminds us of the importance of discernment. So there's a lot of things that come from this darker energy, that baser energy, that can knock us off our track a little bit, that pulls us into the dark side of that windy road, right? Just as there's so many things that can pull us into the light and, kind of that spiritual bypassing, there's so many things that pull us from both directions. And so we look at the love and light, we say, okay, that is what it is. Or we look at all the beautiful things and we say, okay, yeah, we created that. But then we also have to look at the serpent in the eyes, in the teeth, dripping with venom, and say, yes, I created you too. So don't tempt me. I will not walk in your garden, and I will not walk in your garden either. I'm going to walk the middle path. So it's also a protector. And I'm going to show you a very awesome image next, because the serpent is a tempter and a protector. Energetic balance. You don't want to be overwhelmed when you're going through this process. If you have an intense experience, you want to reach out to someone that you're working with, that's coaching you or that's helping you along to kind of help you put the information in the appropriate buckets. You also want to let some of it go. You don't always have to heal yourself. Sometimes just accepting, that you're not perfect, accepting that you're a little bit wounded is totally freaking okay. Like when you're sick, and the moment you accept you're sick and then you go to bed and you rest, that's when you begin to heal. And so it's okay to sometimes not be doing all the shadow work, especially when it is leaving you in a place that's frazzled or intensely overwhelmed. Think of this. This is such a beautiful image. We are all the center of this egg, projecting and creating that reality outward. And the serpent is a big part of it. And it represents those baser instincts, those baser urges, those energies we are led through fear and anger and victimhood, through the thoughts that we live in lack, that we don't deserve the riches and the abundance that's been provided for us to nurture ourselves and to grow and evolve spiritually. We're told that we're not good enough. We're told we're born in sin. So those sexual encounters, that instant gratification, that delicious buffet of food, the drugs, the alcohol, all of that stuff that just makes us feel a little bit transcendent for just a moment, or the drama, the arguments, the pain, the messing with people, that sort of energy. All of that is the serpent energy in the Scorpio. It's there to catalyze energy and to get you to wake the hell up. Because when you're in that space where you're not minding your spiritual energy, then it's diffused. Your loosh is spent, it's outward, and it gets gathered by stronger forces. So when you can turn that energy inward, when you can focus inward, accept the serpent for what it is, accept the beauty of everything that it is and its purpose. Instead of biting into the egg before the egg can hatch, this coil keeps the egg warm so that whatever's inside can be nurtured and can grow and can expand and can evolve. So the Kundalini energy and spiritual awakening, what exactly is this energy you keep talking about, Dr. Dani? Well, it is the serpent, okay? It's that serpent coiled around this small egg that is us as gods being incubated, coiled 3.5 times at the base of the spine, at the root chakra. So this coiled serpent represents a potential, a dormancy, waiting to be awakened through conscious practices. It resides in the Muladhara, which is also called the root chakra, which is red energy, which is right between the vaginal opening and the anus. Right there, they call it the perineum or the taint, but that's where that root chakra lives. Okay, so if you can envision that in your mind eye, that's where it is. And that is the base of not feeling secure, not feeling safe, not having trust in the environment around you, feeling that you don't have enough abundance around you to support you in your spiritual work. Like if you're worried about money, if you're worried about eating, if you're worried about your rent, you're not going to be worried about like spiritual awakening. You're worried about just survival. And so that's what that root chakra is. And so that's why when that energy is awakened, then a trust, a co-creative energy with the universe awakens within you, so that it's taking care of you because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You finally understand your code and you're okay to sit within it. There's stages of ascension. There's this dormant stage where it lies coiled and untapped. And this is usually when we are in our survival mode. And then when we get a little bit comfortable, perhaps when we partner with somebody, Or maybe we start earning a little bit of money and we're not scraping by, and we kind of want to explore, like, what else is there? So I've got all this sort of settled. What else is going on in my life? And this is really an interesting thing, because this is what happened to me. I had all my shit together. Like, I was good. And then all of a sudden I start going back into meditation, and it awakened things in me that I thought I had already healed and taken care of. And so while you're going through that survival stage, you are building up trauma. You are building up sort of hidden and buried energy that you will eventually need to work through. And so it's important that if you can do a little bit every day, even though you're still trying to survive, just sort of tap in and find the feeling of gratitude somewhere in your body, then you're on your way. Okay. So that's one way you can activate it, is just by the mere concept or the intention of being thankful. So these kind of energetic practices where you simply set intentions and you feel into that emotion is just as good as meditation, and just as good as untapping that coiled energy. But the real deal, guys, the real ecstatic bliss is when you do sit down and shut off your mind and relax your butt and breathe into it. Let that throbbing, pulsing energy rise. So you'll feel it down there, but then you don't think of it like sexual energy. You let it rise. You with breath work, there's breath work you can do. You let it rise up into the sacral chakra where your creative energy is. And then it starts to create this sort of warm and spreading energy, and that rises upward into your solar plexus and your heart. And when that energy enters your heart, when you can finally crack open the Kundalini energy in your heart, you have the compassion of Christ. You can look at everyone in their eyes and know you are seeing yourself. You can turn the other cheek. You can forgive. You can have compassion, and everything just starts to let go. And so that's where the tears come in, because that weight off of your shoulders then allows the energy to rise up into the throat, where you can sing. You can sing your awakening. You can speak it to others. You can guide others to the same energy because they're hearing your voice. You're like a beacon of light when you speak your words after you've done that. The first time it happens, the first words usually out of people's mouths when they have a Kundalini awakening that high is, "Oh God." Okay? So, "Oh God, Om." That's what comes out of the throat. And then the visions come when it goes to your third eye. You're now suddenly psychic. You can now send energetic mental images and words to your family members and friends, and they will respond. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. If any of you have been there, you probably know this. The crown chakra, my God, this is connecting to source. This is becoming one with source. And then because your root chakra is safe, you can pull in the energy of Gaia, the golden liquid fourth density photons. That all combines in your heart, and you've got a supernova of creation, a golden copulation of matter, of spirit and matter combined into one thing, which is you, the center of the toroidal field, the center of the Merkaba. Okay. So then you realize all of this, and you can integrate this into your daily life, and the universe blesses you. And then you all of a sudden, things that you need are brought to you. Activation practices, meditation, breath work. I'm not going to get into that in this talk, but either self-stimulation or working with a partner in a spiritual way to stimulate the body to awaken that coiled energy, to awaken that energy to rise. And it's not necessarily about the pleasure principle in terms of instant gratification. It's about having a spiritual union. Tantric practices, you can look that up. There's all kinds of books for that. And then also yoga postures, just in general. Whenever you do a yoga class, you can do a Kundalini yoga class, a Shriya, I think it's called Shriya yoga. You guys can actually ask Lori. She can show you probably some of the postures that help open up that spinal column. And then, of course, mantras, which I use in almost all of my meditations. So these mantras, these are the instrument of the throat chakra, bringing in sort of that wisdom carried on the sound vibrations. So while the sound you're hearing is the third density energy that your ears pick up, there's also a fourth dimensional frequency that's in those mantras that go right to your inner ear, to your inner eye, and to the feeling and intuitive centers of your brain. Kundalini and sexual energy. This is what I was talking about with the tantric practices. You have an interconnection with either you or your partner, or you and the source and the creator. Kundalini and sexual energy originate from the root chakra, that chakra that's closed up for so many people because they don't feel safe. And it's a very powerful energy. It's raw and it's creative. And it can help, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it can help you with your own refinement, and you can have more control over that energy. So it's not just about sort of, getting the pleasure, it's about using it. So it's consciously transformed to awaken Kundalini, and the practice focuses on harmonizing physical sensations with spiritual goals. And the integration of sexual energy, when aligned with the Kundalini, fosters vitality, creativity, and spiritual awareness. You're more likely to live longer. You're more likely to be healthier. You are more likely to be happier. And so that's what you're doing when you're in that type of a union. You're actually tapping into this very powerful creative force. And so what you do is you set intentions during this energy work, because that's what it is. It's energy work. You set intentions while you're using it, and it brings you tremendous results. So when you can tap into this, you can be superhuman, right? So as above, so below. The journey of the Kundalini mirrors the cosmic patterns like spirals found in galaxies and DNA. And as the Kundalini rises through the chakras, cosmic energy flows through the universe's dimensions, because you are the universe. This can connect you to source, giving you spiritual experiences and universal truths. And the crown chakra is a portal to cosmic consciousness, allowing deeper access to universal knowledge. This is what I call our God power. And so if we are in a simulation, you're not going to have the entire universe manifested in front of your eyes. This is graphics on demand. When you are playing the game, you only see what the character needs for that moment in time. But you're planning your game. So you're going to go into your resources, which is your Akashic record. You're going to go into your imagination, which is your creative portal, and you're going to create for yourself the next phase of your game, the next level of your game, while you are in God mode. And your body's doing nothing. Your thinking brain is doing nothing. You're just allowing yourself to create every moment as it comes. This is also called flow state. So it parallels celestial ascension, aligning personal evolution through universal cycles. And then this is what we become. We become this physical creature, animated by the cosmos, by stardust, by spirit. Being able to use the baser frequencies for higher spiritual purposes. Taming the serpent. It's all of these things. It's Kundalini meditation, awakening your spiritual energy. It's shadow work, facing and integrating those fears, even the ones you don't know you have. It's letting go of old things that your ego's attached to, that your identity's attached to invite in new creative energies. It's an embodiment practice using breath work and movement, dancing, wiggling, connecting to the serpent energy. And it's conscious sexuality. It's working with your own energy within your own space and sharing that with a very precious and special few. That can transform sexual energy into spiritual awareness through tantric and mindful practices. And then start slowly, seek guidance. There are people that have been through what you're going through. So, you don't want to overdo it. Your path is yours. And if it doesn't mean that you've got to figure it all out overnight. Okay.
And so we'll end this with the closing that says, may all the benefits that I've received benefit all beings everywhere.